Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the MD of Bighorn Local Assessment Review Board hearing, which we'll refer to as a LARB hearing for September 23rd, 2020. I see Mr. Kangaroo and I see Ms. Larson here. Thank you for joining us. Due to this meeting being held virtually, there are a few housekeeping items that we would like to go over. First of all, please be advised that this hearing is being recorded for public record. Secondly, we ask that you please not interrupt or speak over anyone. We ask that when you're not speaking, please mute your microphones or telephones to minimize the background noise. And this being modern technology, if we run into connectivity issues, please be patient while we work to get everything back up and running. I'll start by introducing the panel, and then I'll ask the parties to introduce themselves. After that, I'll explain our usual hearing procedures. My name is Martin Buckley, and I am the appointed presiding officer for this panel. The other panel members are Paul Ryan and Marina Kreiner, and I'll ask them to give their introductions. Paul is a counselor for the MD of Bighorn. Marina is a resident of the hamlet of Benchlands. Does anyone have any objections to the board as constituted?
No, I do not.
Mr. Kangaroo?
Same goes for me. No, I do not.
Objections? Thank you very much, sir, and thank you very much, Ms. Larson. I'm now going to have the parties introduce themselves, starting with the complainant. Could you please state your name for the record and indicate whether or not you're the owner of the property?
Yes, my name is Bill Kangaroo, and I am the owner of the subject property.
Thank you very much. The respondent, Ms. Larson.
My name is Kelly Larson with Equitable Assessment Group, the assessment firm for the municipality.
Thank you very much. So the LARB's usual practice is to have the complainant present their evidence first, followed by questions from the respondent and the board. Next, the respondent outlines their submitted evidence, followed by questions from the complainant and the board. Finally, both parties will have an opportunity to present their argument and summarize their evidence for the board. It's important to realize that the evidence there's a requirement that the evidence be submitted prior to the hearing, so the board will not accept any new evidence today. Is everyone satisfied with this procedure? Are there any questions from either the respondent or the complainant?
Yes, satisfied. I have a question. Can I share my screen to present my evidence? Nothing new, but everything that has been already submitted.
The clerk is nodding to say yes, but that's with capability. So yes, when the time comes, we'll be able to share.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Finally, if anybody needs a break or if any problems come up, please let the board know as soon as possible, and we can address those things as we go. So as both parties have exchanged documents before the hearing, we'll mark all the documents for the record now. So Ms. Hill, if you wanted to speak to them.
I certainly do, thank you. For Schedule C1, we have the initial complaint received, which was 1 page. For Schedule C2, we had 9 pages, which was the evidence submitted by the complainant. Schedule R1 is the assessor's rebuttal with 11 pages. And Schedule C3, which was the complainant rebuttal of 6 pages.
Thank you very much. So if there's any questions about admissibility, those can be raised later, and we can deal with those issues when they arise, and we can strike records or material from the record later if necessary. Is everyone comfortable with this procedure? Ms.
Yes.
Larson?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Kangaroo?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, sir. Are there any preliminary issues for the board members to address at this point? Ms. Kreiner?
No, thank you.
Mr. Ryan?
I do not.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. I have no issues. So we'll start with the complainant presenting their disclosure evidence. So we're ready to hear your evidence, Mr. Kangaroo, if you're set to go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to try to share my screen and let me know if you can see it. Does that work?
I can see it.
Okay,
I
so
can see it.
this is the initial application. To start off with, I want to thank the board for participating in this hearing, taking the time to do so, and listening to my complaint with regard to this assessment complaint. So on the initial application, which refers to the subject property of 10 Tyndall Lane in the hamlet of Benchlands, I requested an assessed value of $385,990 based on the following reasons. My property doesn't have water, and compared to two recent sales in the hamlet of Benchland, this property is also much smaller in the square footage of the house. Also, this is a seasonal property for me, and it does not have a garage as is listed in the assessment over the years. Moving forward to look at some of those points that I mentioned, this is one of the properties that sold in 2019 in the hamlet of Benchlands, which I'm being compared to. It is 22 Ghost Road Benchlands. It was sold in 2019 for $569,000. It was built in 2014. It is on the same elevation as the Ghost River, therefore it has a good well water. And it has a two-car garage, as you can see here, which is attached. And the overall square footage of this two-story development is 1,914 square foot. Also, it has additional improvements, which you can see it has a six-car garage, which is separate. And it had a 2020, I wrote by mistake assessed, but it's the estimated corrected value of $571,100 currently. The second property that I looked at in the hamlet of Benchlands, which sold, is 6 Ghost Road Benchlands. It was sold in 2016 for $317,500. This property was built in 1990. It has also water on the property. It has a three-car garage, which is detached, located here. And the property is, again, 2 stories high and has a square footage of 2,132. And the estimated value in 2020 was $368,200. The respondent, Ms. Larson will show pictures of my property. Here is the subject property, 10 Tyndall Lane, Benchlands. It's a 1-story with a semi-developed basement. I have 1,089 square foot. It is a seasonal property. It was built in 1965. It has no water on the property, and I'll show that evidence. It does not have a garage, and these pictures are proof of that this is actually a storage shed, which has been wrongly assessed over the years as a garage. As you can see here, it doesn't have a concrete pad, just a gravel floor. And it was assessed for the year 2020 as $502,900. Now, the reason that this property doesn't have a well is in these pictures here, you can see these abandoned pipes. This water well was washed away by 2013 flood, which affected the Ghost River and the area. At the time, it was an 8-foot deep well, and it was behind the TransAlta berm, adjacent to the Ghost River. Since then, TransAlta has not allowed their reinstatement of this well, as this land is now owned by TransAlta. So that moves us to our efforts to obtain water on this property. And here I'm showing 2 receipts, which we had dry wells. And the first one cost $11,342. It was a dry hole of 280 feet. And that one was at $34 a foot. And then the second attempt in 2015 was the first portion, 290 feet at $25 a foot, and the second portion at 60 feet, additional 60 feet at $10 a foot, and that cost $8,242. So here we spent around $21,000 with no success of getting water. We drilled the third well at a cost of $22,000, and that initially produced half a gallon a minute, but that trickled down to 0.25 gallons per minute, and eventually went dry in 2016. So further costs that did not produce water on this property. As evidence which I obtained was from Ms. Larson. This is the summary of all the properties that the subject property is being compared to. In the top column, I have summarized the benchland properties that sold. So as a quick comparison, you can see my property is much smaller in square footage. However, it does have a larger land, and it is an older property, 1965, compared to the other ones are 2014, 1990. Then I also separated the vacant land properties and had a look to see how I compare to those ones. Here we have a range of properties from 1.9 acres all the way to almost 10 acres at 9.79 acres. Mine is somewhere in the lower end of 2.7 acres. And again, how much those properties sold for, and separated the adjusted sale price of just the land portion of my property. Here is the overall picture of the sales that has happened in the area, including Ypres. I will discuss this further, that I don't think Ypres is a good comparison in my rebuttal, but the data is here. This is an overall picture of how I feel and what we hear in the market, in the news. It is not an apples to apples comparison, it's an apples to oranges comparison, but these data are from the City of Calgary, Calgary Real Estate Board. So overall, we see in the graph on the left that the prices have been declining from 2018 to 2019. It's just a market feeling. And on the right-hand side, you can see, focusing on the red curve, we see in 2006 bubble, what we call the good old days. But now in 2015, and moving on to 2019, you can see that the prices of properties in 2015 was referenced at 0%. And in 2019, we are at or below 10% of the values on 2015, which is the area of interest for me because I obtained the property in 2015, and now we're talking about the prices in 2019. So when I had a closer look of the assessments of my property, in 2015, in total, I was being assessed $385,990, and in 2020, now it is being assessed at $502,900. And when I looked at graphically at my assessment, I'm seeing a rise as opposed to what we're seeing in the market. So overall, I'm seeing a 30% increase in the assessment of my property, both with respect to land and improvement. And this is the reason I tried to take action and look at the evidence closer and go through this hearing. At this point, I asked if I should present the rebuttal evidence or wait after Ms. Larson's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Kang, for the presentation. No, it would be a case of, could you put your mic? Thank you. It's now time.
Not sure why Martin's getting playback.
It's now time for questions from the board or the respondent. So, Ms. Kreiner, do you have any questions?
No questions at this time.
And Mr. Ryan, do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Ms. Larson, do you have any questions?
Not at this time.
I just have the one, Mr. Kangaloo. Going back to the spreadsheets that you had indicated you received the information from Ms. Larson. So the figures that are estimated values in the blue column, those are figures that came from information provided by Ms. Larson. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. That's the only question I have, I believe. We're now at the stage where the assessor can provide her rebuttal to the Ms. Larson, if you want to proceed.
Okay. So the subject property is located at 10 Tinda Lane, Benchlands. The size of the lot is 2.7 acres, and I provided a figure in Figure A, an aerial showing you can see the hamlet of Benchland, you can see the highway, and you can see down the river to the left-hand side, the river bank or whatever. And the location of the property is the square that's highlighted in a darker color. The assessment record indicates the house was built in 65, as stated by the complainant. Total area is 1,089 square feet, has a full basement underneath. There is also a small enclosed veranda on the house that is approximately 125 square feet. You can see the veranda in the picture on page 3 to the left-hand side, and the property in the photograph there. The record indicates a detached garage type building that is 474 square feet, was built in 1970, and it's on the property and has a value of $9,600 associated with it. The current 2019 assessment for the 2020 tax year is $502,900. I put the assessment summary below, breaking down the 2.7 acres at $334,700. The one-story and basement is $158,600 in assessment and $9,600 for the garage, for the total of $502,900. Upon further inspection and details from the owner, we feel that the garage building would be more of a shed structure. Just to clarify here, it still uses rates. We just take out the concrete floor. We just take out that stuff. So it's still the same construction type. But there should be some value to it, as you can see from the complainant's photographs, that the shed has electrical in it and it has a useful purpose as storage on the property. During those discussions with the owner, the property also has no water well, and that can affect the property value as well. The cost to cure this situation at most, based on the estimates in 2014 and 2015, would be $8,000 to $11,500. I get that those were actually paid amounts. Those costs have likely risen, but the cost to cure doesn't always reflect the negative impact in the marketplace. Currently, for equity's sake, we adjust improved properties with a lack of water to them by a negative $25,000. So as properties are assessed in the municipality, their land values are reduced by $25,000 in an adjustment if they have no water to them. The assessment summary below reflects the assessment changes or adjustments that I'm proposing. The land value then decreases to $309,700, and the garage detached shed, is now $6,200 in value. Because it's an older building, it was already depreciated quite a bit. Therefore, the removing of the concrete only affected a small amount. Considering the above adjustments, the comparison to sold properties, the market value of the property would be $474,500. Part 1 of the matters relating to assessment and taxation regulation, 2018 AR 203/2017 states that an assessment of property is based on market value and is based on a valuation date of July 1st, or the assessment year. I've indicated that standards of assessment in Figure E below that. The hamlet of Benchlands has experienced some increases in market value over the past years. That's just based on the information we have, and it's not the Calgary marketplace. It is what's happening currently in this municipality. As the demand has risen in the MD, so has the value. In developing market value, we must look at the sales and the market location in order to try and determine the value of the properties based on July 1st, 2019 valuation. So I have a table, Table A. It indicates, it's similar to what I gave to the appellant, and it lists all of the sales that have occurred that we were using, and I broke it down to the top five comparables. So we used 2 in Benchlands, and then there's the 3 that are in Waipress. Yeah, and most of them are a little bit newer. Well, not a little bit, a lot newer. And then Tyndall Lane in there shows the subject property. As that estimate of value column in the table shows, it gives what each individual property sale price, what the estimate of value for the subject property would be based on that one sale price only. So the estimated value of the subject property based on just the Benchland properties, which is the first one and the last one in that grouping, is $439,450. Estimated value of the subject property based on all comparable hamlet properties is $478,900. And note that the property was sold in 2015 for $500,000. It was between family and the owner feels that the overpaid just to keep it in the family. I did also note, though, that the appellant's information on the water well drilling, etc. One of the invoices was from 2014, before the purchase date of the property. Of course, it was still in the family, but was aware of these issues at that time when they purchased in 2015, that there was no water. All sales of newer properties built between 1990 and 2014, and all properties are roughly 1 acre smaller than the subject property. When reviewing the sales, it's important to look at not only the value per square foot, but the actual sales prices. Sales comparables show photos of each of the sales from Table A used to defend the assessed value of the subject property. By looking at the sales prices, it's not unreasonable to expect a proposed value of $474,500 for the subject property. When viewing the sales comparison on each sale, I've included that report in Appendix A. It calculates the estimated value of the subject property with the adjustments for things such as added depreciation, which would include the age of the property being significantly older, no garage, and also the subject property is larger. So if you look at each one of those individually, the first one on page 1 of Appendix A is number 6 Ghost Road. And it shows that based on that sale of that property, the estimated value of the subject property would be the $458,900. And at the bottom of the page, it shows a 22 Ghost Road, which was a sale in 2019, the estimated value of $420,000 for the subject property, specifically based on that sale only. But they're adjusted for all sorts of things, the depreciation and the age, this building size, numbers of bathrooms, the plumbing units, fireplaces. You can see all the adjustments are placed in there. So everything is taken into consideration when we use these comparables. And it's important that we not only look at the 2 sales in Benchlands, but also include the 3 sales down the road in Cypress. The Benchland sales occurred in 2016 and 2019. So as you can see, we don't have a lot of sales. The subject property was purchased in 2015 for the amount of $500,000, in 2016, the next sale, and then we don't have another one for 3 years. So we have to use data within the municipality to try and interpolate something that, some sort of value that would occur within this area. So, and we do time adjustments, but there are less adjustments when we use the more recent sales, which all of the ones in Cypress were all 2018, and then we have the 2019, of course, in Benchlands. Time adjustments are done so that we can utilize sales over a number of years. The sales are adjusted to make them reflect a value of as of July 1st, 2019. I provided the in Figure F, the time adjustment summary based on residential properties in a rural setting, not within the Exshaw or anything closer to the park that way. These are all of the ones rural out here. When reviewing the sales, and this is an error in this on page 8, it says when reviewing the sales in the hamlet, it says Lac des Arts. It should say Benchlands there. My apologies. The adjusted sales range from $368,000 to $691,000. Now, not all of these are exactly comparable, but based on the construction quality type, although they are not a large number of sales, we can interpolate the sales data and determine that proposed assessment is fair and equitable. It's my position that the current assessed value of $502,900 be adjusted to $474,500. Thank you.
Sorry, that concludes your rebuttal. The questions from the board. Mr. Ryan, any questions of Ms. Larson?
Yes, I'm just trying to unmute my mic. So you came up with a figure of $25,000 as a deduction if there is no water on the property. How was that number arrived at?
I forgot to click on. Is that that number is arrived on based on historical information. Previous assessor had it as an adjustment. It's used on cost to cure as a method, and then of course a buffer for what negative effect it would be in the marketplace. So as you see, like a well would drilled for 10,000 or 11,000. A cistern, I have my historical data basically shows a cistern, roughly, anywhere between 8,000 for the cistern itself installed, to 20,000. So it's kind of a rough estimate, but to be equitable, we apply the same amount to everybody across the board.
And have you applied those numbers on other properties in the MD of Bighorn?
Yes, they are.
So is the lack of water on a property common in the MD of Bighorn?
I wouldn't say it's common, but there are instances where recreational properties not necessarily they don't necessarily want to have a water well drilled. They just have a cabin and haul water in, or just don't have any at all.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions, Mr. Ryan?
No, I do not.
Okay, Ms. Kreiner, any questions?
Yes, I do have a couple of questions. My first question is, you have some sales comparables in your rebuttal for Ghost Country Place. Just to clarify, those properties are within the Ghost River Country residential subdivision, not within the summer village of Vipers. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're just on the outside, on the outskirts there. Yes.
Okay, they are within the MD of Bighorn, correct?
Yes. Yes.
My second question is, you did not visit the property?
Yes, I went by myself. I talked to Mr. Kangaroo because he doesn't live there. He just doesn't, we couldn't meet, we couldn't get together. So he allowed me permission to go over and stop by.
Okay, so you have only seen the outside of the property.
Correct.
Thank you.
I have no questions, Ms. Larson. If there's nothing further, we can move on to Mr. Kangaroo. You have an opportunity to provide rebuttal evidence.
Sorry, Mr. Buckley. Leslie Ray had a question. It was more of someone is sharing. Kelly, I think you're sharing your screen. You must have hit the share. That's good. Thank you. We can presume. My apologies for the inconvenience.
Does that resolve the matter now? Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Great.
Everybody else can hear him?
You see my screen?
Yes, you're sharing the screen. You've got your rebuttal evidence.
Yes. So at this point, I'd like to thank Ms. Larson for the evidence that she showed, and she was very reasonable in understanding my position in accepting that the property doesn't have a water well, and also the adjustments for the fact that the garage is actually a shed. So she was quite reasonable, and I appreciate that. However, she has to protect the positions of the MD and do her job, as simply put. But I have some further arguments or evidence to show. So with respect to devaluing the property, the land by $25,000, I don't think that's a reasonable estimate. After all, it's an estimate. The receipts that I presented were for dry wells. It would cost double to drill a well, a water producing well. So a $34 per foot would actually be $70, and a $25 per foot would be $50. But that is not a remedy for this property, as we've already tried, and it would be risky and simply put money down the hole to try to drill any more wells on this property. So the second option would be a cistern, and a 5,000 to 10,000 gallon cistern for somebody who wants to live there. It would cost, I would say, around $30,000, because you got to think about all the other costs of the piping and the pump and so on. And then there's the ongoing cost of maintaining a cistern. Obviously, you have to purchase water and have it transported there, and the hassle with that, and dealing with stagnant water. I would estimate this would be a cost of $50,000 to $70,000 over the years, would devalue the property by that much. A third solution would be a legal proceeding particular to this property against TransAlta to reinstate our historical well. And again, with legal costs and reinstating that well by the Ghost River berm, it would take an undertaking of, I would estimate, around $75,000. So overall picture, if I were to purchase a property that has water versus one that doesn't, I don't think I would settle for a discount of $25,000, but more in the range of $50,000 to $75,000. So with respect to assessed value of the improvement, I would say that the benchland is a hamlet where the majority of owners call home, and the smaller portions of owners are recreational and seasonal residents. Whereas Summer Village of Cypress, that most of the sales have happened and being compared to, is just that, is a seasonal property. It's an estate development and has a perceived prestige, for lack of a better word, associated with it, and hence a higher market value. It is therefore, I think it's more appropriate, although there's only been 2 sales, that the subject property be compared to properties in benchlands only. And some kind of a correction has to be applied to that because those other properties are much bigger and newer. So I reviewed the sales data provided by respondent, and I actually focused on the data that is obtained from the summary of the assessments obtained from the MD's website. I separated the improvement price from the land price. And here in the red boxes, I'm showing the subject property, the 22 Ghost Road, the first property that I showed you, the picture, and the 6 Ghost Road. And I looked at the data in this way. I looked at the square footage of the improvements on those properties, and I looked at, if I were to look at the assessed value per square foot, 10 Tyndall Lane is being assessed at $154 per square foot. That's my property. 6 Ghost Road, which was sold in 2017, I believe, is at $112 per square foot. And 22 Ghost Road is $160 per square foot. That's the newer property that in the first picture I showed you with the multiple garages. So looking at this data and looking at the physical appearance of 6 Ghost Road, I believe that's a better comparison to my property. And rather than me being at $154 per square foot, which compares me to 22 Ghost Road, I think 6 Ghost Road is a better comparison. And this further supports my position that what I was being assessed for the property back in 2015 at $129,360 was actually $118 per square foot. That is more of a realistic assessment. Then I looked at the vacant land properties. And as you can imagine, determining value of land based on amount per area is more difficult for properties which have improvement. So simply applying a sale price per acre is not a realistic comparison. However, I did try to look at them to see where my property falls. So in doing so, these are the vacant land properties, 8 Ghost Road, this one with the GPS location, and 13 Pears Road. You can see those properties anywhere from 1.92 acres to 9.79 acres. And the price per acre drops, as you can imagine, for a property that is larger. So the one that is 1.92 is paying $114,000 per acre, and the one which is 8.6 acres is paying $23,000 dollars per acre. So I made an assumption that if we say a property that is vacant and doesn't have a house on it is worth 2/3 of a property that does have a house on it, then my property, which is 2.7 acres, based on the average price of those 3 vacant land properties at $62,000, if I multiply by that factor of 3/2, I arrive at a price per acre of $93,178, which would mean for a 2.7 acre property, which is mine, my land should be assessed at $251,582. So I made an assumption here that a vacant land property is two-thirds of a property with improvements. So I tried to justify that and further look at the data. And this is what I did here. I looked at the properties with vacant land and the properties in bench land. And again, I graphed the price per acre versus the land area. And I came up with this relationship, basically a graph that's showing that a property such as this 6 Coast Road, this very first point on the graph on top here, is paying at 1 acres, is paying $238,500 per acre. And at the other extreme, a larger property, this point here, which is vacant land property of 9.79 acres, is paying $48,000 per acre. So ideally, you want to be on this red curve. And if you're above it, you're paying more. If you're below it, you're paying less. So in essence, this is a model of the sales that happened in the area. And if I extrapolate a 2.7 acre, which is mine, it would fall on the curve around $93,000 per acre, which further again supports my position that my property should be assessed at $251,000 for the land portion. So in conclusion, taking those two factors, justifying my requested value of $385,990 makes sense, that the improvement should be at $129,360 and the land should be at $251,182. Now, if you add these two, you don't get $385, you actually get $380. But since in my application I requested $385,990, I'm going with that final number.
Thank you. Thank you. That concludes your rebuttal, Adam?
Yes, it does.
Okay. There are going to be questions from the respondent or the board, and then you'll have a chance to summarize things. So,
great.
Are there questions from the board? Ms. Kreiner?
No questions at this time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ryan, any questions?
No, I do not.
Okay, Ms. Larson, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. The complainant refers to on the first page of his rebuttal. He provides some information on the well drilling, and yes, it would be a gamble to drill, etc. That's the only information we have on any costs that have been submitted so far. I'm not sure, I guess I could ask where the valuation of 50 to 75,000 comes from. Is this an opinion or did it come from market evidence? Do you have anything for that, where that comes from?
Right. I don't have any evidence. I think there's a. I don't have any further evidence. It is an opinion, but I don't want to bring forward more evidence, but I know my neighbors that have put in larger cisterns have paid close to those values.
I guess, and then my next question or comment is on the respect to the assessed value of the improvement and the opinion that properties in on the outsides of the summer village that are within the MD that are from the Whitepress area and plus the stuff in the hamlet, that there would be perceived that there would be more value in on the estate properties for a recreational property. That not necessarily does not translate, because sometimes recreational properties within a hamlet, there's a sense of security that there's somebody there for the full year. So I don't necessarily agree with that statement as well. But I mean, that's just a comment on that. And then if I go to the issue of the square foot, the value per square foot, and using the comparables just at number 6 Ghost Road and 22 Ghost Road, the adjustments that the assessed amount per square foot that the complainant puts in there doesn't actually put in the any adjustments when we look at the differences between the properties. He says he's most comparable to number 6 Ghost Road, which is a property that was built in 1990. It is actually incomplete. It hasn't been completed. There's about 35% left of the assessment to remain. That there's stuff that's not done on the property. So based on that property alone, though, his estimated value is 458,900. Okay, and if you look at 22 Ghost Road, the one that he doesn't feel he's comparable to, his estimated value would be 420,000. And that's a total, but it's not his not necessarily following the word I'm looking for, following the actual adjustments that happen to these properties within. He's just looking at a raw value per square foot. And with the vacant, and in response to the vacant land properties, the dollar amount per square foot table that he's also provided here as well doesn't take into the fact that when we compare the assessments, it's important to realize that properties that are larger in value do have a decrease in value per square foot. It's similar to the law of diminishing returns, but as the properties increase in their size, the value still increases just incrementally in smaller amounts. But we use it like a constant. So in pertaining to the assessments here, for an example's sake, it could be a $150,000 constant and then a smaller amount per square foot or per acre going up. And that's how they're looked at. So the table isn't necessarily catching that adjustment as well.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I thought I had a question, but I believe you captured it, so I'm fine there. So no further questions. Mr. Kangaroo, you have an opportunity to summarize your complaint, and please go ahead if you wish to do so.
In my response to what Ms. Larson said, with respect to the land, the table that I showed, and the fact that she said those are not comparable, in fact, I presented the graph that you can see there's not a linear relationship between properties that are larger and smaller, and it's exactly to the point of Ms. Larson, is that larger properties pay less per square footage, and that is reflected by the graph that I showed. And for her argument to say that my land is bigger and hence I should be paying more, well, there's a finite limit. As the property gets bigger, there's an adjustment for the per acre price. So I believe my graph is correct as a representative model. The second point, with respect to the 6 Ghost Road not being complete.
Mr. Kangaroo, if I could stop you, this is a point for you to summarize, not rebuttal comments.
Okay, great. Then in that case, then I would go back to my final conclusions that the amount that I'm asking is justified based on the evidence that I presented.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to.
Oh, no problem. I misunderstood.
No problem. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Ms. Larson, a chance for you to summarize your case. And again, please, it's not a rebuttal, it's summaries.
I understand. No, that's fine. I think I just feel that the assessment be adjusted to the amount that I stated in my first submission was what I'd requested.
Okay, very good. I thank you, everyone, for your cooperation, for your helpful presentations. I hope Mr. Kangaroo and Ms. Larson, do you feel you've had a fair hearing, open and you've been heard in that?
Yes, I do.
Yes, for sure. And again, I appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you very much. So thank you again for your cooperation and your helpful presentations. I declare this hearing closed. Thank you. The Act requires a written decision within 30 days, and the clerk